All right, everybody, we are live with the Combatcast. It's a man called David Cheveruni, and we're going to talk about this past weekend's fight night with Fluffy Hernandez and Dolodies, and we're also going to talk about UFC 319, and of course, the big news, UFC TV rights deals, Paramount, CBS, they're going there. So much to talk about. Please like, subscribe to us, and before we even get into anything else, why don't we just tell people we got coming up, Chevy?
All right, August 23rd, UFC Fight Night, Walker versus Zhang. That's a 7 a.m. card from China. And then August 30th, Labor Day weekend here in the States. So no UFC fights, but we're going to be putting together our Mount Rushmores of a particular division.
Yes.
And then September 6th, UFC Fight Night, Imavov versus Baralo. That's another Fighting Nerds fight, and that's 3 p.m. from Paris. So we have a few earlier fight cards coming up here.
All right. I like that. I like a few early ones. Let's get right to the top story of the week. It's not actually 319. It's Paramount. CBS, Paramount, going to be the new home of the UFC for the next 7 years. $7.7 billion. Basically 13 numbered events. That's their pay-per-views that we have now. So they're going to basically have 13 premium live events and 30 fight night cards. That's what's going on right now. The packages as they stand currently on Paramount and CBS, there's a $7.99 package and a $12.99, which basically includes no ads and maybe you get Showtime.
Yeah.
So there's a few different things there. I don't know if their packages will change a little bit as, this deal comes through, but I imagine that's basically it. The biggest thing out of this, no more pay-per-views for the UFC. To quote Luke Thomas, I saw some stuff he was talking about this. This has to be a big, big W for the fans. And that's how I feel. Like, I don't know how all of this is going to shake out for sure. What's going to be good, what's going to be bad, what's going to be good for the fighters. Kind of sucks for them, like he pointed out too. Like, you didn't really make a lot of efforts to get a union. And if you had done anything, you might have saw some of this money up front. And now,
Yeah, there's been multiple attempts, and they haven't been able to put one together. So.
Yeah, so it's not ideal for them, but who knows, right? Who really knows?
Right. We'll see. We don't know all the deals, obviously, if they're going to be increasing pay, and even if they do, it needs to be a tremendous amount to make up for that. But
I think what Luke said was interesting. Will be more interesting, possibly, is to see what happens on the higher end of the paid people, like the Elliott, the Poiriers, and stuff like those guys.
The people who are getting pay-per-view points are, they need to be compensated in some other way, because otherwise they're going to be losing a lot of money.
Now, before you kind of go into your own details of what you thought about this, is this the end of pay-per-view? Like, are we kind of
no? Dana already said that there's still opportunities to do one-offs here or there. For pay-per-views. He's very adamant about this White House thing. I assume that's going to be a pay-per-view, but I don't know if you see Connor come back in some world, maybe he's on a pay-per-view, but he said it's not dead, but I
think they had people like Shapiro who did say it was a dead Brando who owned TKO. So we'll see how that plays out, because look, who the fuck wants to spend money on a pay-per-view nowadays? Anyway, it's the biggest drag that UFC has, other than the time differential for a lot of, us East Coast fans and other fans around the world. But just getting it in a one bundle package, I have a hard time picturing once people get into this that they're going to want to go back to pay-per-views. I just don't see it. Anyway, I don't know. I'm excited about this. It does make me not kind of want to rent some of the pay-per-views coming up, though, because I'm like, but or at least be a little more, choosy, which I was already starting to be. But I'm like, okay, well, a couple more months, Yeah. But, anyway, I'm excited about this weekend's card. But what were your thoughts overall about this?
Yeah, I want to see what's going to happen with Fighter Pay. Obviously, for them, it's potentially bad news. I mean, you get a lot more exposure, which is good for making money outside of the UFC. But as a career inside the UFC, will you be making a significant amount of that? You know, they're getting $1 billion a year, basically. Are they going to see any sort of increase for that? We don't know. Based on previous dealings of the UFC and fighters' lack of ability to unionize or form any sort of cohesive group. I doubt it. I assume they're going to get screwed. But for the fans, this is great. I saw somebody did the math where if the Paramount prices stay as they currently are and you watch every card, it turns out to be 7 times cheaper than the current ESPN Plus subscription and pay-per-view model. So I've spoken about how much I dislike the ESPN app on here many times. I do have Paramount. I've never had an issue with it before. I watch, like soccer on it and stuff. So a lot of like high volume sporting events happen on there, Champions League, Europa League, those are big things. So with lots of people watching, and they managed to get it done. So that's great. But I don't know. I guess we'll see. I still have some questions. Like I said, mostly Fighter Pay. I'm not sure about, but
I don't think that we'll see, even in situations like, say, if they get a Conor McGregor or a Jon Jones, we're going to see them on pay-per-view. Because my hunch is, they also said some of these numbered events, if are going to be on CBS, maybe simulcast. So my hunch is, if they get a Conor or a Jones, which they might put even more money into getting them now, with all this money.
You think so?
Possible, because I think. Well, here's what this is who knows, but I think CBS and Paramount, someone else I heard was doing the math here, like this deal that they're paying them is actually worth more than what Paramount and CBS is currently worth. Like the streaming.
Luke Thomas talked about that. Yeah.
So
somebody corrected him, but when you look at it at a cursory level, it's more money than they're worth, like on the stock market or something, but that's not their total worth.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
But my point is, I would just see, there's going to be some who maybe get involved in this, and they're going to try to really build this thing up and get people here. So I just have a feeling that some back end deals might be getting made and whatever to get bigger stars in the beginning. Like, I think the first few months, especially, look for some big cards and some big names that probably pop up. And I could be wrong. Dana's notorious for doing whatever he wants. And
you're looking at this from like optimistic situation or perspective. I'm looking at it like there's no pay-per-views, so there's no real incentive to build a good card. We're just going to get more and more watered down, awful cards.
Yeah, that could happen as time went on. I just think in the beginning, they're going to be, they're going to try to put their best foot forward here. But we'll see.
Hopefully. It's it didn't go to a bunch of different streaming services. So that was something that was going to be out of the UFC game at this point. If that was the case, they still don't have rights to Dana White Contender Series, Road to UFC, and The Ultimate Fighter. They're still looking for homes for those. But I don't necessarily need any of those. So if they don't end up on Paramount, if it's on something I have and I want to keep, I will. But
that's where I do. Right.
Yeah. This is all good news for me. I'm going to save a lot more money. I'm going to get rid of Disney, Hulu, ESPN bundle. And I'm going to stop paying whatever that is a month for those 3. So going to save your boy a lot more money. A lot of fans are going to be happy with this, but I'm hoping down the line we're not going to be getting screwed.
Well, yeah, we shall see. We shall see. Time will be the big tell. Let's get right into the fights here. Before we get into UFC 319, let's just look at the main event And co-main event from this weekend, Douglas versus Hernandez was the main event. Any other fights on this card you want to shout out?
Shout out to Christian Leroy Duncan. He got a round 1 spinning back elbow KO over Eric Anders. That was a good fight. But we absolutely have to talk about Elijah Smith's round 1 KO slam of I'm going to mess this guy's name up. Toshomi Kazama, bantamweight, Japanese bantamweight. It was very much like the Rampage slam where he slammed him down, their heads collided. He followed up with a couple shots because the ref was not doing his job, I guess. But he was out for a long time. It was scary, but they've been doing this lately. When there's bad knockouts, the broadcast team will let you know that the fighter's okay, afterwards when he's seen the doctor and everything. And he even posted a thing where he was in Five Guys eating a burger afterwards. And so he's, alive, I guess. Who knows what he's going to deal with later on in life, but he's okay for now.
Yeah, that was incredible.
It was a wild knockout. But let's get into this co-main event. Ode Osborne versus Steve Ersig.
Ode Osborne, man, I'm watching this, and I'm watching him put on a show in round 1. And the commentators make note that a lot of people struggle with Ode Osborne in the first round, and then they start to wrestle him. And it's like, man, they were just prophets here because Ersig started to – it was like completely different fight. Ersig, started to win in round 2. I thought it was more of an uneventful round, but then I thought Ersig really took control in round 3. And at the end of the day, I just walk away thinking Ode is like super quick, super explosive. But
his speed is amazing.
Yeah, he just has to round out his game a little more because I feel like, man, he's just a guy that could be the next level. It's like Ersig won, and I'm happy he won, and he's talented. But, I can't wait watching this. I'm like, man, I look at Ode, and I'm like, that's the guy with a little more potential to me. Like, if he just, just fine-tune some stuff, this guy could be a serious contender, I think.
Yeah, if he worked on his takedown defense, which he has, because in previous fights he's looked even worse on the ground. Right. There was improvement, but obviously there needs to be more if you want to fight those top level guys. But sure. I could see him turning into sort of like a Izzy Adesanya of flyweights with great takedown defense and just dominating people on the feet. So with creativity and speed. So that was a good fight, but let's move on to main event. We're really only excited about this card or this fight going into this card. Roman Dolidze versus Anthony Fluffy Hernandez.
Hernandez, he's right away, he's moving forward. He sets the pace. And Roman, early in this fight, I remember he caught him with a good shot. And I thought, ooh, okay, this could be problems because Fluffy doesn't seem like he's too concerned about it. There's no issues here, but I'm thinking those are good shots. No, I was wrong. Hernandez has an excellent chin. He's got great wrestling, great cardio. He can strike, and everything is just top notch with this guy. At least this performance, it was hard to find any flaws, And it's occasionally Roman would get off a decent shot, but Hernandez would just eat it up, and he'd end up taking him down. And there were I remember there was a time where Roman grabbed the fence too. And
multiple times, yeah.
Well, multiple times, but I remember the first time he was going to do it, and Herb was basically going to warn him, and he just takes him down. I don't have time for this, And then he basically, I think Herb did take a point away from Roman
right before he got finished. Yeah,
right before he got finished, it didn't even matter because the commentator Anthony just kind of big brothered him and just put him in that choke and tapped him out in round 5.
He dragged him across the octagon.
Yeah, and so just super impressive. I'd like to say that this guy is going to be, who knows? Because there's a big difference, obviously, no offense to Roman and the top middleweights, but I do feel like Hernandez deserves a top 5 fight, at least. I know he's talking about a title fight, 9 fight wins, and I get it.
Right.
Okay, maybe it was 8. I thought it was 9, maybe it was 8. But regardless, he needs a big fight, and I hope he gets it. I think there's Jared Cannonier is fighting MVP, actually, I think, on this
card
coming up.
Upcoming.
Yeah. So that might be, if I'm UFC, I'm looking at maybe matching him up with somebody possibly from that fight. Whoever
Fluffy
wins.
and RDR would be fun.
Oh, yeah. That's another one he had mentioned. I had forgot that. That would be great. RDR, pretty well rounded, and yeah, I don't want to say he'll give him problems. I think at this point, after this performance, I favor Hernandez, but it's a good fight.
Yeah, Fluffy, he looked great. He's relentless. He just keeps coming forward with volume striking and takedown attempts, and he's talking shit to you while he's doing it. So he's a very fun guy to watch. 8 wins in a row. I want to see that RDR fight. I think he needs, one more before he gets a title shot. There's a lot of guys up there that are interesting matchups for sure. So, all right, let's move on to this week's card.
All right, let's talk about it right here. UFC 319, Du Plessis versus Chimaev, as we start the road to the end of the pay-per-view era here. This will be one of the final ones. All right. I mean, we got September, October, November. So okay, we got a few more, but you know where I'm going here. So I'm excited about this main event. The rest of the card, there's some good ones on here, but what about anything before the main card? Anything got your eye?
Yeah, the UFC continues their disrespect by putting Edson Barbosa and Drakkar close on the early prelims. Chase Hooper versus Alexander Hernandez. That's a very fun lightweight fight. That's on the prelims. And Jessica Andrade, she's fighting every pay-per-view, I feel like, versus Lupi Godinez. That's a fun boxing matchup, basically. And King Green versus Diego Ferreira. So I'll always watch King Green fights. He's fun one way or another.
Yeah, 2 veterans right there.
Yep.
Ferreira's been around for a while too, so that should be fun.
Yeah, all right. Let's get in this main card, though. Starting off with, this whole card is actually pretty good. So, Tim Elliot versus Kai Asakura.
I like this. Kai is the former risen bantamweight champion. He debuted in the UFC, and he got a title shot in his first fight ever. Lost to Pantoja in a fight that he looked very dynamic, but Pantoja basically, was able to take his shots and then do his own and kind of outclassed him. But that's Pantoja. But Kai is 21-5, 13 knockouts, 3 subs, 5 decisions. He's exciting, but Tim Elliot, who's been an up and down fighter, I feel like is a really interesting matchup for Kai because Tim is very versatile and can take this fight anywhere. 20, 13-1, 3 KOs, 7 subs, 10 decisions. He's won 3 out of his last 4, so he's been pretty consistent lately. He's a former Ultimate Fighter tournament winner, fight in the night 3 times, performance of the night twice. Don't be surprised if Tim can ride out an early storm and maybe pull this off. But I'm going to go with Kai with a first-round finish because Tim also likes to be exciting, and I think there could be fireworks, and it could be one of those fights where somebody goes down and goes down early.
Yeah, Kai seems like he could be exciting, but the facts are that he just hasn't fought UFC level contenders while they're in their prime. Now he's fought a lot of guys who were in the UFC or ended up coming to the UFC, but not really in their prime. He fought Horiguchi, which he beat once and he lost once. He fought Manel Kape, same thing, I think. Lost 1, won 1, but he couldn't get it done versus Pantoja. But Tim Elliott also is not at that same level. Pantoja is maybe the greatest, flyweight of all time. If there wasn't DJ, you could say Pantoja is already there. So, I think I'll pick Kai by TKO. I'll say round 3, but either way, we should have a better idea of where he belongs in the rankings after this one.
All right,
moving on to a potentially interesting matchup. Jared Cannonier versus Michael Venom Paige.
All right, Cannonier is 18-8, 11 KOs, 2 subs, 5 decisions. Fight of the night 4 times, performance of the night 4 times. Most significant strikes landed in a UFC middleweight bout. That was against Marvin Vettori, I believe. I forgot to write it down. Also, I want to say, Chevy, you would notice too, he's 40 now, correct?
I think he's like 41 or 42. He's at least 41.
Great shape, though. Victory. Michael Venom Paige, 23-3, 13 KOs, 3 subs, 7 decisions. Great kickboxing career before this. One of the most unorthodox strikers. He's absolutely a nightmare matchup for a lot of people, but I don't think that's going to be the problem with Jared Cannonier, who's basically well-rounded. I think he can clinch him. I think he can take him down, and I think Jared will grind out a decision here.
Yeah, MVP is such a hard puzzle to solve. I could see this one going sort of the way Jared's fight with Izzy went. Very boring.
Yes.
If he stays on the outside. So, I mean, Jared could try to wrestle him, but he has to push forward into MVP striking to do so, which not a lot of people seem to want to do that. So, I think this one probably ends up being a boring decision that goes to MVP.
Okay.
So I hope I'm wrong about that one, because if they do decide to both go for it, it's a very fun matchup.
Yes.
All right, moving on.
This one's gonna be fun.
Yeah, Geoff Neal versus Carlos Prates.
All right, Prates is 21-7, 16 KOs, 3 subs, 2 decisions. He basically was undefeated in the UFC. He was 4-0 with 4 performance night bonus, and he just came off his last loss, which was to Ian Gary, which was just a big step up. And I thought he looked good, but obviously Ian was able to get the best of him. But Carlos is part of that Fighting Nerds team, and I think he's going to be a problem for a lot of people. That being said, Geoff Neal is a great matchup. All right, 16-6, 10 KOs, 2 subs, 4 decisions. Performance of the night twice. Fight of the night once against Shavkat Rakhmonov. So if you're having a fight of the night with Shavkat, that right there tells me all you need to know. It's a good fight. Geoff Neal can create some problems, but I'm going to say Carlos will find a way to win a decision and in a very exciting fight, though.
Yeah, I'm very high on Prates. He has incredible power. So I think he could be champ at some point, but I think this is a much tougher matchup than some others believe. So on his day, Geoff Neal's one of the best. You mentioned that Shavkat Rakhmonov fight, which, he did end up losing, but he looked phenomenal. So, I mean, he has great footwork and power himself. So I think he probably ends up taking Carlos to the 3rd round, and he ends up getting a TKO, though, because I think he has, good enough. I think the footwork's going to keep him safe a lot, and he'll wear him down. So, but if Prates gets a round 1 KO, which is just as likely, I'm all in on the Prates train going forward. So I think it'll be Geoff Neal, but I won't be surprised either way. All right, let's move on. Co-main event, Lerone Murphy versus debutant Aaron Pico.
Aaron Pico, 13-4, 9 KOs, 2 subs, 2 decisions. Guy's an excellent striker, excellent wrestler, ton of promise here. He's been wanting to get in the UFC for a while. He's in now. Lerone Murphy, though, tough matchup right out of the gate. This guy's 16-0-1, 7 KOs, 9 decisions. Fight of the night once against Barboza. And performance of the night. I'm going to say Pico, who had some adversity early in his career. I think he's coming into the UFC at the right time, though, and I think he's going to shine. I think Pico is going to win this. I think it's going to be a 3rd round submission. I think he's going to put on a good pace. I think he'll wear him down. And although I think Murphy will present a challenge, I think Pico is going to be the star here.
They never give these Bellator guys the easiest fights when they debut in the UFC, but my God, undefeated Lerone Murphy is your first fight. It's so tough. That's so tough. So, with that being said, obviously Pico is that good, and he'll certainly have a wrestling advantage while also still having KO power. So it is an interesting fight, and I'm hoping that Pico can do well in the UFC, unlike some of the other Bellator people that have come over. But the past has told me to go with the UFC guy in this situation. So I'm going to pick Murphy by decision. I think it's a close fight.
Okay.
Also, co-main event in your first fight also is tough. You know, it's a lot of pressure. So
I think this kid's been ready for this. I think there's been a few hiccups, but you're right. I mean,
I like Lerone Murphy, but I'm with you. I'm rooting for Pico just because of all the hype he had and the adversity that he went through with all the pressure on him in the beginning of his Bellator career. So I root for the guy.
Yeah, same.
All right, main event. We've been looking forward to this one for a couple weeks here. So Dricus Du Plessis versus Khamzat Chimaev for the middleweight belt.
Chimaev is 14-0, 6 KOs, 6 subs, 2 decisions. Fight of the night against Gilbert Melendez. 5 times performance.
Gilbert Burns? Gilbert Melendez has been retired for a long time.
CBS Strike Force, baby. I'm thinking about CBS. He's got the record for fastest consecutive wins in modern UFC history, too. 10 days. Record for quickest 3-fight win streak in modern UFC history, 66 days. This was all,
record for most fights pulled out of.
Yes, yeah.
In the UFC, 6.
Yeah. Dricus Du Plessis, the champ, obviously 23-2, 9 KOs, 11 subs, 3 decisions, 11-fight win streak. He's had performance of the night twice, fight of the night 2 times, and he's the current middleweight champion. So what we've learned here with Khamzat is he is absolutely deadly and dangerous. Very beginning, we have seen moments where he's gotten tested against certain people. Later, like Kamaru Usman would be one of them, who took a fight on short notice, and we saw Usman start to look good as the fight went on. I believe that was only a 3-round fight too. The fight with Burns, which was also a 3-round fight, we saw Burns kind of come back and test him.
Two guys who are welterweights,
right?
Burns fought at lightweight at one point.
Yeah. So
Dricus is huge for middleweight.
Yes. So, but we just saw Chimaev choke out Whitaker in the opening seconds of round 1.
Broke his jaw. Yeah.
Broke his jaw. So this really is like a fight that I feel like if it ends early, Chimaev's going to win. If it goes later, I'm going to favor DDP. Although if Chimaev gets up by quite a bit of scorecards, he could hold on and still win this fight. So it's an interesting fight. And who's to say that Chimaev hasn't worked on some of those cardio issues too? We'll see.
Yeah.
I'm going to go DDP. I'm going to say he ends the undefeated streak, walks out as champion. I'm going to say he's going to deal with some adversity through the first 3 rounds. DDP has already showed that he can deal with adversity. And so I think he'll get a finish late in round 4.
Yeah, we're very much in line here. So, like you said, Khamzat, very scary in round 1 and 2. But if he can't get DDP out in those 2 rounds, can he survive later on? I think it's more likely that DDP gets beat up for the first 2 rounds and then dominates the next 3, and probably even ends up finishing Chimaev. Remembering that Darren Till dominated DDP early on, and he came back from that to beat Till. So, also Dricus has an unreplicatable style. So there's like no way that Khamzat can train for him properly. So I assume that Khamzat's going to get him down a few times, but I just think DDP's so big and strong, and also has a lot of grappling skills that he doesn't necessarily get a lot of credit for. I think he's going to get up a lot, and every time he gets up, that's just draining more and more on Khamzat's small cardio tank. So I'm going to go round 4 when he's tired. DDP gets him down and finishes him with a sub.
Okay, we're exact agreement on that fight. We still see. We both agree though. This we'll find out. We'll see what happens. All right, guys. Looking forward to these fights this weekend. Chevy, let's tell people we got coming up one more time though.
All right, August 23rd, UFC Fight Night, Walker versus Zhang, 7 a.m. from Shanghai. And then August 30th is Labor Day weekend here in the States. We'll be putting together a Mount Rushmore segment for you guys. And then September 6th, UFC Fight Night, Imavov versus Baralo. That's an interesting matchup. 3 p.m. from Paris, France.
All right, guys. Enjoy the fights this weekend. UFC 319 should be fire. We'll see you back here next week to talk about the fights.